For most of the games I play on Famidaily, I'm at least a little bit familiar with them before I record. Maybe I've only played them for half an hour before that, but enough where I've got an idea of the game. But there's about 20% of the games where, just due to the nature of the show, I got the game in and put it in my collection to wait for recording day. And in the case of Doki Yuuenchi, it was one of the last 10 games I needed to complete my set. So it's not like I had a lot of time to dig into it before we got to this episode. Come to think of it, all of the August 9th, 1991 games are weirdly rare. I had no idea when I put in Doki Yuuenchi what I'd be getting into. But it was by a kid who's done a lot of good work on the Famicom so far, and I had some high hopes. And then I played the game. The Japanese title could be translated as Heart-Pounding Theme Park. As anyone who would share the origin of Super Mario Bros. 2 would tell you, Doki Doki is Japanese onomatopoeia for the sound of a rapidly beating heart. Of course, the thump amusement park doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, so Heart-Pounding Amusement Park it is. It also has a subtitle, Crazyland Daisaksen, or the Crazyland Campaign. That's where they got at least part of the title from when they released it on the NES in Europe as The Trolls in Crazyland. Doki Yuuenchi is a platformer. I might have been tempted to call it a run and gun, except you don't do a lot of running or gunning. The plot of the game is that your girlfriend is kidnapped by Daimakayo, or the Great Demon King. So naturally you jump into the movie's screen to rescue her. Look, the intro in the game doesn't match the story in the instruction manual, so I just have to go with what I can here. You're controlling the boy Pom Pom as he fights his way through 12 stages of the Crazyland amusement park to save her. Hitting A makes Pom Pom jump, while hitting B makes him perform an attack. You can angle your shots upward by pressing up and hitting attack, or shoot directly above your head by jumping, then pressing up and attack. I actually found both of those abilities to be not particularly helpful. You have a very shallow angle when you're standing on the ground and shooting upward, so if you want to hit somebody who's basically one body height above you, you have to be at the far left-hand side of the screen. And as for the overhead shots, there's only a few enemies that it's even effective against, and jumping generally makes you vulnerable to them. Doki Yuuenchi also has everybody's favorite kind of platforming stage, minecart levels. On the minecart stages, holding down B will accelerate the cart, eventually. It's really inconsistent. And if you jump at certain points on a slope, you'll gain a lot more height. That's also really inconsistent. But if you pull back while you're jumping, you'll do a backflip. That gets you nothing and does nothing. Pom Pom can take multiple hits, but you can't really tell at first glance. His uniform changes color every time he takes damage, and his attack powers up. Get hit once and you do a two-way shot. Get hit again and your shot turns into a soccer ball which does extra damage. One more time and you get 2 soccer balls, and then you die. You start out with 3 lives and 3 continues, but you're given a password after every stage, so if you run out of continues, you just have to re-enter the password. The stages are super short, too. Even if you're not speedrunning, they'll probably take you about a minute to finish each one. Every 3 stages there's a boss, so that means there's only 4 bosses in the game. It's a weird choice to have an American Indian head as the first boss, but at least it's not a racist caricature. Oh, don't do that. Well, it could have been worse, I guess. They could have done some stereotyped African Oh no. But hey, the guys with the turbans on the flying carpets are so generic that you can't really call them racist caricatures. So that's something. Besides those problems with the enemies, once you're past the first stage in Doki Yuuenchi, enemies require a lot of hits to take down. Their patterns don't become more elaborate, they don't have more effective attacks, they don't come at you in larger quantities, they just stand there while you mash the fire button. It makes the game even more boring than it was. Enemies can drop some items. Coins will give you some points, and if you collect 100 of them, you get an extra life. You might get about 15 or 20 per stage, except for the minecart levels where there's actually coins scattered around. So you probably shouldn't rely on them for extra lives. You can get this icon for an extra life. The hearts restore 1 point of health, and the bird will fly out on its own to attack enemies 4 times. Of course, most enemies in the game take more than 4 hits to defeat, so the bird flies out, stays on them, and goes away without even killing them. Platforming in this game is a bit of a pain. It's functional when it's just jumping over a hole, but standing on a moving platform or in an auto-scrolling section, and things get a little bit weird. The movement feels extra awkward at those points, and it just makes the game more frustrating to play than it really should be. Doki Doki Yuuenchi doesn't really seem to be remembered in Japan, but the very few people I could find talking about it seem to be a lot more forgiving of its faults than I was. Obviously, I didn't like this one at all. I just had a miserable time playing it. If the mediocre platforming was better, the action would still be bad. And if the action was improved, you'd still have to deal with the mediocre platforming. It's far from the worst thing on the Famicom, but in 1991, standards have improved a lot, and something like Doki Doki Yuuenchi just isn't really acceptable anymore.